Okay, so I'm gonna make this vlog about psychology and the beef that we that my kind has against the psychology, especially here in Chicago. So you might be asking yourself, what does that mean when I say my kind? Well, I'm from the Synoptic Knights Templar, a subsidiary group from the Knights Templar that has to deal with metaphysics and solving ethical issues and mediation between factions. So that's what I was doing for a very, very, very long time. I'm still doing it. So the Wakani and the Rosicrucians. The Rosicrucians mostly are completely different than us, but there's a small sect that Obsidian Rosicrucians that uh, been parallel with us, helping us out with things. So if you put them all together, it's called the Trinity culture. Okay, so the Trinity culture does not like psychologists. Okay, so modern psychologists, and there's a reason why we don't like them. I'm gonna get into this and how it affects you. By the way, how it affects the normal people. A lot of things that normal people should know about psychologists that they don't know. Okay, so number one is we practice something called Emma, like a girl's name, Emma. It's a epistemologic mental alchemy, EMA. So it's the short version of it is called Emma. It's also called obsidian witchcraft, and it's also called Wakani witchcraft. Now the reason why it's called witchcraft is because it's a craft and it's very, very old. So it really pops up officially, even though it's been used before that, in 1157. This is where the Wakani and the Synoptic Knights Templar kind of marry into each other. So it's the Dark Ages. It's during the Crusades that the Wakani and Knights Templar merge. Weird because they were mortal enemies at one point. They were killing each other, quite literally killing each other. These witches and Knight Templars, because the Templars would cross back and forth from Europe to the middle, the Holy Lands in the Middle East. During that time, the Wakani would kind of prey on the Knights Templar, back in the days. And oddly, well, another video for its own self. But basically, we end up, intertwined with them. So we're obviously on the side now. The females females turn to Wakani, males turn to the Templar. That's basically what happens. So if babies between us, females are raised Wakani witches, and males are raised Templars most of the time, unless they seek another way of living. So what's the glue between us? Okay, well, one of the glues between us is the craft itself. So in regular witchcraft, you may have there's some really beautiful things in different witchcraft. You got eclectic witchcraft, then you got druidic witchcraft, then you got paganic witchcraft, then you got new stuff, like the Wicca, and then you got Essex witchcraft, and then you got your voodoo, and then you got your hoodoo, and then you got your Palamayombe, and then you got your Santeria, and then you got the Santa Muerte Onde, and then there's all this stuff that goes over and over and over. Most of the stuff is new. None of them could light a match anywhere near us, because I mean, we're already established at 1157. That's the Dark Ages, bro. So voodoo, for example, they go voodoo is thousands and thousands of years. Voodoo is not thousands of years old. And you have these people like in New Orleans that say, "Oh, it's so ancient." No, it's not. You're looking at the tip top of the 1700s, maybe 1800s during the slave trade. The reason why they think voodoo is old is because they worship certain gods, African gods that are older, that are really old. But that's not the beginning of voodoo. They didn't start voodoo until just a couple hundred years ago. That's it. So there's a lot of misnomers and witchcraft and the occult. Okay, the reason why people don't know this is because it's very simple. Because they're not checking. They're really not. They're not. This is the one good reason why Google exists. You can go check them out. So here's the thing. Okay, psychology, psychiatrist. We don't really have a problem with psychiatrists. If you have a problem with your brain, you're going to want to have some ties with psychiatrists, because psychiatrists are the ones that give out medication, and they're the ones that tie a physical problem with your behavior, which is completely logical. We also don't have a problem with psychology, but we have a problem with modern psychology and the behavior of psychologists, and you're going to figure out why real soon. So, in the regular world, psychology is not psychiatry. They're very different from each other. Besides them, one being able to dispense medication and the other one not, there's a lot of huge differences between psychiatry and psychology. I'm going to give you an example about something. A lot of people may have heard of DID, which is dissociative identity disorder, which people say multiple personality disorder. This is fake. Okay, most psychiatrists, most completely prove. Not only did they don't believe it, they actually proved it. They proved this multiple personality disorder fake, and like 65 or 66. Then in 1975 they do it again. So they keep on proving it fake. But because you see movies and sensationalism, there's certain psychologists that think it's real. There's a Netflix series about a psychiatrist that helps serial killers get off of death row because they have DID. And you can actually see yourself how phony this is and how naive this woman is as a psychiatrist. She's actually just trying to get fame or whatever. So what I'm trying to tell you is these people are far and away from perfect. They're a lot of times just a regular person, regular person's common sense trumps their ideologies, despite the fact that they have titles. And one of the biggest problems with psychologists is that they go to school, they get a doctor, they want the same respect as a physical doctor, which they shouldn't have, by the way, because they're practicing a theologic practice, which they want to say is science. Remember, psychology is not psychiatry. I want to give you an example of something. I got a problem, a very serious problem with my brain. It was caused by high blood pressure and genetics. I have a very strange genetics in my family. So it's called VBD, vascular brain disorder, and a lot of people who have very high blood pressure end up getting this. Well, I had it for a long time, and my insurance never paid for MRIs and all that stuff. So after I had a stroke, because of it, I found that I had other different types of strokes, and I didn't even know I was having those strokes, and they caused parts of my brain to just literally be dead. Like I got huge amounts of dead brain matter and tissue in my head, from lack of blood circulation in the brain because of this disease. Okay, now psychiatry. Now obviously my brain is has some problems physically, and they're going to cause psychological problems because the brain acts as a remote control to your consciousness, as it were. So of course I'm going to have certain psychological problems, in which I do. I have problems sleeping. I have all types of nervous problems, nerve problems, painful nerve problems back and forth in episodes, and this is caused by the physical conditions of my brain. Okay, so psychiatry is very useful to me. Psychiatry, especially when it comes to understanding how it affects my brain, and also the some medication I take for it. Okay, I don't have a problem with psychiatry. I got a problem with the ethical behavior of psychologists. So let me say this again. So there's a serious problem with the ethical behavior of psychologists, and believe me, it is serious, because there's a lot of bad behavior with them. Now, one of the things that if you're not a cultist like I am, or you're not a cult, if you're just a regular person, you may be a minority. Okay, you may be black, white, Asian, whatever, Arab, and go to a psychologist and think that your conversations are private, and they tell you this. They literally say that they are. Okay, they're not. They're not. So if you're going to get deported, and they want to check your record for any kind of any criminal activity or whatever, and you admitted it to a psychologist, the state, can request those records, and they will give them the records. And there's no debate. So I have had psychologists say that I'm lying about that. I'm not lying. and then later on they find out themselves that I'm not lying. So if you're a minority, you don't want to really be having, go see a psychiatrist, and then you don't want to see a psychologist. You know, psychologists often they fight with each other. Before their heroes were Sigmund Freud, Jung, all these people that they admired it, and then later on when some of their mentors start to go against them because of whatever, maybe someone from Cambridge don't agree with them, or someone from Princeton or Yale don't agree with them, because they have these schools of thought, and what happens is they start this domino trend, and they start going against their own mentors. And like today, now they say, oh well, the work of Freud is worthless. Hey man, these people are so wishy-washy and flippy-floppy, they don't know what they're doing. I'm serious, they don't. Like I said about the multiple personality disorder, that's fake. Multiple personality disorder, this is what it is, and you're going to know. I'm going to give you an example what common sense will tell you. So it's not that these people didn't experience abuse now, that they did experience abuse. But what happens is that when they want to talk about it, they have a hard time talking about it. So then they start doing what's called role playing. Just like when you have a kid, and the kid doesn't want to talk about something, and you say, oh well, I'll role play so that maybe they'll admit something to me, and then you tell them, if Princess so and so did this, what do you think she'd do? And she tell you, it's exactly the same. So there's no one, when you see these people like flipping out or whatever, that's fake. All they're doing is role playing so that they can tell you, admit something that is embarrassing to talk about. That's what it is. Some people say, oh, I have multiple personality, but no, you don't. You're a liar. Okay? What that means, you're role playing. The psychologist coaches the person into role playing. Like I said, there was a real big Netflix special about this one woman who does this. You can see for yourself what I'm talking about. Psychologists and psychiatrists are saying the exact thing I'm saying, that this is nonsense. So DID shouldn't even be there. Okay, so back to the war with us and psychiatrists. So before I was born, I wasn't born at the time. My mother Phantasma had a problem with some psychologists, because they're starting to understand that my mother was helping a lot of people in the community through mediation, through epistemologic mediation. And they were curious of what that was. And then when they found out there's something like psychology in that, either they were jealous or fascinated by this, and they started giving my mother a problem. So one of the big mistakes they did was put my mother Phantasma in Dunning Asylum, which is Chicago Reed Hospital, but the Chicago State Hospital in 1989 and so forth. So my mother, they abused her over there, and us, they locked her up and treated her badly the way they treat everybody in Dunning. And then what happened was she started converting a lot of people, and also the way that she speaks and her use of Emma, of obsidian witchcraft epistemology is so strong. She was simply able to get the people just to open up the doors. Now that doesn't mean she did like a Jedi mind trick. No, it doesn't work that way. But she did do things that made them have looping thoughts and obsessions and uncomfortable sensations, and that made them decide it would be better for them to release my mom. So they released my mother, and my mother went to Serbia, and she just gained more power out there. So when she was in Dunning, by the way, she had been in Sunland Asylum in Florida, and she did the same thing but quicker, much faster, within 2 days. Dunning, they had her there for a while, a few months. So while she was in Dunning, there was a psychiatrist. I can't say her name. I did say her name in the blog before, and I got a bit in trouble for that, so I can't say her name. So there was a psychiatrist in 1989 who was a really nasty person, and who thought it would be prudent to lock my mother up in a ward naked, in a ward, and do these kind of dietary things, and they didn't want her to be able to concentrate and convert people. So what they did was they gave her electric shock, thinking that electric shock, every 3 days would stop her from concentrating. So my mother didn't like that, obviously. So my mom had some kind of uh, mental war of talking with this woman, the psychologist, and now whether it was by coincidence or whether it was by some type of trigger, this psychologist committed suicide about, I don't know, I would say maybe 8 days after my mom escaped. So so we have a prominent psychologist that committed suicide 8 days after my mother's escape in 1989. Okay. So did my mom kill that psychologist? That's the really question. She didn't do that. If she did kill her and she somehow got in her brain and made her kill herself, hey, that's up for conjecture. If that was true, my mom was certainly she had every right in the world to do that because this woman was torturing my mother. So if you want to believe, it's nothing supernatural. But if you want to believe that she was so adept that she was able to loop some bad sensations so bad that this woman killed herself, well, she deserved it. She shouldn't have. She took my mom off the street, and tortured her in an asylum. I mean, that's cut and dry. But I don't think she did that. I think that this woman had problems. Psychologists themselves have a lot of mental problems. They deal with psychology and psychology patients all the time. So I think that that's not true. I think that this woman killed herself because she killed herself. It didn't have nothing to do with my mom Phantasma. But years later, I have a guy today, a very well-known psychologist, an author of books, a Gold Coast guy, very wealthy, and I mean wealthy when I say wealthy. That's it made my life miserable for a few years, and then he is the nephew of this woman. So he's the nephew of the woman that was his mentor and helped put him through psychology. His family, they helped them actually get the degrees of psychologists, put him through school. And my mom, and in his mind, my mother somehow killed him through. Yeah, it sounds crazy, and the reason why it sounds crazy because it is crazy. That's why. And to think that usually a psychological patient is going to believe that a person, tinkered with somebody's mind so bad that they killed themselves. A psychological patient would say that, not a doctor, not a psychologist, but yes, indeed, this guy believes that my mother, in 1989, made his aunt kill herself. Okay. By the way, this is one of the things that come up in court when I was in court, and the judge pretty much laughed it off, as you should. It's ridiculous, As the judge said, he goes, "There's no such thing as witchcraft, man." He literally told this guy. So so then he would get laughed out of court, which he should be laughed out of court. But that doesn't mean that he left me and my daughters alone. He's always I have a disability check because as a Knight Templar or whatever, I can't receive a certain amount of money because I'm out, I'm a Templar from Wisconsin, Tinley Park, and we don't gain properties or money and all that, we're sponsored, like MacArthur or Monsanto or somebody, they'll sponsor us, but this guy tries to mess with my disability check, and that pays for my medication, that could kill me if I don't have those medications. I could die from that. So yeah, it's pretty serious, man. So you have this kind of a rich psychologist from the Gold Coast that's messing with me, and then I had to forcing me to do things I don't want to do, and then I do these things, and then I get him off my back, and then after so many times, then his little mentors, his proteges come after me too, all these people from, I can't say where, they're Gold Coast psychologists, so they write a lot of bad things about me and my family. I get them scrubbed. The reason why I get a lot of it scrubbed from the internet is because it's illegal. It's called slander. So at one point, it was just everywhere. Like you look up our name, me and my daughters and all. You just look up our name, and it's just horrible things about us. And then you would find out. You would look at the article, who's written the article, and it would be these so-called prominent psychologists, I can't say the names on the blogs, but they're psychiatrists, and or not psychiatrists, they're psychologists or counselors that are writing these articles. Now I'm going to ask you a question flat out. Does that sound ethical? I mean, is it ethical for a psychologist, especially if you were a patient of a psychologist, to write slandering articles about them? That's illegal, bro. And a matter of fact, it is illegal. This is the reason why we got most of the slander gone, most of it. So we were able to scrub the internet of all types of horrible things they were saying about us. So why do they keep going after us? This is the really question. Well, this is actually easy to answer. First of all, some of it is personal revenge. That's number one. So, but they really want to do. What they want to do is do a chess. They want to checkmate us, so that like when you're playing a game of chess, that they'll have power over us to put us in an institution, lock us up the way they did my mother. And what they want to do is test this drug on us. So this is really what this is about. So there's a drug. I don't know if I can say the name, but I'm not going to say the name. I did before, but I'm not going to do it here. So this drug is untested by the FDA, by the FDA. So it hasn't been in service in the public, but it's been trying to get in service in the public since 1973, June 1973. So what it is they need to practice on certain people. They need to test this drug on certain people with certain genetics, and unfortunately, me and my family have these genetic properties that they want them to have tested. So it's kind of like a science fiction comic book novel, like a plot to but it's real. Unfortunately, it's real and it's annoying. So what it is that they want to. Well, first of all, they asked us. We'll give you a certain amount of money and so forth. So we're sponsored by a company that used to be by Bayer. There goes, I just said a name. That helps us out with certain things. But so they don't want to go against that company, so they went to another pharmaceutical company, and this pharmaceutical company came to me and my family and said, well, we'll give you a lot of money if you guys will submit to this test for the drugs, for what they call a study group. And then it includes a psychological study group, which of course would have these guys overseeing it. So the very people that sent me to court would be the very same people that had sent me and my daughters and sisters to court would be the people in charge of that study group while we're in these institutions being guinea pigs for these people. And then what would happen for them? Well, if they get a clearance, a green light for FDA, their careers would be just catapulted. First of all, they'd be famous in their own field because no one ever achieved this before. And then the money from grants and personal money, it's stupendous. You wouldn't even understand how much money they would get. It's just insanely vast amounts of money through via grants and funds and all this. And of course, their careers will be they'll die and then go down in history for having testing this drug on this generational genetic problem with these types of people, which is us. So why? Of course, they're not going to let us. They've been bothering me for 14 years, and every time they ask me about this crap, I say no. So what they try to do is try to catch me on some kind of criminal charge so that they could force it on me. Then they could force us to take these drugs as a study group. And I'm making the blog out right now in front of everybody, on Facebook or on the media and all that, because this is not new news. This is old news. This is, this story has been told in articles, on different magazines and articles in, what was it, 7 years ago. and they're still messing with us, So now, what's interesting is because we're heavily occult. We're the stuff we practice is technically witchcraft, and because I practice a certain type of craft that deals with the psychology and the occult. Technically, I'm a warlock. I don't call myself a warlock. I do sometimes jokingly, but technically I am. And I guess so. The Wakani are witches. They have been. They always been. Their brand of witchcraft is via psychology. And they like traditional witchcraft too, but really they're 100% psychology based witchcraft. So obviously you're going to be really attracted to the occult demeanor that we have, and so they kind of have this kind of science versus witchcraft war going on, and people are really into it and attracted to it, and it brings the psychologists that are involved in it. It brings them fame, because it's such a strange thing, and a lot of people are just really interested in it. For us, it's not good. I'm kind of forced to make these blogs right here so that people don't think that they don't believe those articles that we're doing these horrible things. They make us look out to be monsters. They say horrible things about me all the time. A lot of the stuff that they write though this is from psychologists. These things that they write about me are fantastic. They're cartoony stuff. You can't possibly in your right mind believe this. But because they're from psychiatrists, psychologists and social workers, people just tend to believe it. If somebody else were to say this about me or about my daughters or about my mother or whatever, you wouldn't believe it. You think these guys are crazy. You guys are trying to make an urban legend, or this is it sounds like bullshit. It really does. But because the people writing it, are counselors and they have titles. They have titles that are supposedly high respected. They believe it, even though there's no credit or proof of what they say. So one of the things that we did when we scrubbed the internet from them was said, "Hey man, if we find out that you're writing this stuff about us slanderers, we're going to sue you." So what they did to get around this, they put a disclaimer. Yeah, so they'll put a disclaimer, and the disclaimer will read. They'll find like pictures of us or take stuff from the internet, stuff from our own sites. Sometimes they take my own words and twist them around. They go to my DeviantArt and take my words. So what they'll do is they'll write a disclaimer and go, well, this might be true and it might be false. They'll write an article and go, well, they'll say some horrible things about my daughter Farina or something about my sister Sable or something. They'll say something horrible about us, and then they'll do something funny. They'll put a disclaimer on it and go, well, maybe we're just making this up. Maybe this is not true, but maybe it is true. So they do that so that I can't sue them again. I can't sue them for slander because they're saying maybe there's a disclaimer that it might not be true. That's their trick. These are these Chicago psychologists that are doing this. Tell me that this is very bad behavior. I mean, yeah, I understand that we're very strange people and we have different lifestyles, but that doesn't give you the right to try to make us guinea pigs and pick on us, and pick on the whole family for decades. No. So basically, what does that mean for you too? Like I said, the thing about the Hippocratic Oath and psychology, some of the things I learned about psychologists, I learned the hard way when I was taken to court. If you're Mexican, you're black, Mexican, Arab, Chinese, the chances, that some of the stuff you say in a psychological setting, like when you go to a psychologist's office and they say this is all confidential, no, it's not. They have no Hippocratic Oath. They can be court ordered to take your records. They can be court ordered to do character witness on you, a bad one, and so that you're not able to come back in the country, or you can be viewed as criminally intent, and that will make you look bad in court, as when they're trying to send you to jail or keep you out of jail or whatever. You do not trust these people. Psychologists, they're not what you think. Now, that's the danger they are to you, normal people. Are they going to be obsessed with you, obsessed, and chase you around for decades like they're doing me and my family? No, they're not, because the money is not. They don't have a money train to follow. Like they do this because they want to become rich and famous. That's why they're messing with me and my family. So, but what they can do to you, what they can do to a normal person, is bear some slandering judgment and say you have a disorder that you don't have. Say that you're violent when you're not violent, and they could say these things in a report. And when they do go to the court, when you're trying to get custody of your kids, or trying to hold down a government job, or trying to nullify a marriage or something typical like that, it can be used against you. So no, say no to psychologists, man. They're bad.